you wrote this last weekend, shortly before the midterm election. You wrote this. Usually a vote is about a policy, a tax rate, say, or immigration reform. This year's vote is about more than that. It's about whether elected Republican officials will obey the law, fairly count the votes in 2024, and obey the will of the people. What's your reaction as we sit here this weekend and you have good American citizens sitting in election offices in Nevada and Arizona just doing the work of ensuring that the votes are counted, they're tabulated correctly, that the accurate counts are getting out to the American people, and this is how it's supposed to work? It's kind of comforting to see, you know, all of this hold up over the last week or so, despite everything that's happened in this country.
Yep, comforting is the right word, reassuring, and also always a reminder of how important this is. As Wellington said of Waterloo, it was the damnedest close run thing you ever saw in your life. And so one of the things we always have to remember is that in a democracy, we have to win battles and the war goes on, and the war is, metaphorically speaking, the war is keeping a system where we can preserve the rule of law, we can preserve the capacity to give as well as to take. And democracy is very counterintuitive, right? We're basically built to take what we want, to secure our own selves, our own destinies, when in fact what a democracy does is it creates the capacity for us to have that opportunity by recognizing, if I recognize that your equality and dignity are worth protecting, you're more likely to recognize that mine is. If I recognize that your vote counts, you are more likely to recognize that my vote counts. And so I feel a lot better about the future, the present and the future of American democracy on this Saturday than I did last Saturday.
Were you surprised at all by the results to see election deniers running for Secretary of State, for example, in key battleground states, being unsuccessful? You're seeing candidates like Mehmet Oz, Lee Zeldin, the New York governor's race, Tudor Dixon in Michigan's governor's race. They conceded. Yes, they were Trump-backed candidates. They had hard-fought races, but they ultimately conceded, unlike the former president. And I want to play what Democratic Congressman Tim Ryan said when he lost his election for a Senate seat in Ohio to J.D. Vance. Let's play that really fast, and I'll get your reaction.
I have the privilege to concede this race to J.D. Vance because the way this country operates is that when you lose an election, you concede.
Not everybody is doing this, but out in Arizona right now, it doesn't seem to be happening just yet with Blake Masters, but candidates conceding gracefully and showing class. After everything that we've been through, it's almost like a balm on the country. What do you think? Did this surprise you?
I think that's right. I think that's right. I think, you know, one of my arguments about American history and American reality is that there was never a once upon a time, and there's never going to be a happily ever after, because this is a human undertaking. It has to do with our habits of heart and mind. It has to do with human frailty and our fallen natures and just trying to get just enough right. But that's what America is at its best, right? Is that just enough of us do the right thing just enough of the time that we keep this experiment in a journey toward a more perfect union going. And I think what was so unsettling, and you had a front row seat of the last 5 years or so, was this notion that perhaps just enough of us weren't going to show up anymore. And that appetite and ambition, the appetites and ambitions of one interest, one party, one person, were going to triumph over what American politics ought to be, which is an attempt to win elections, create solutions to given problems for a given period of time, and then doing it all again. That's what politics is. It can't be total war every afternoon. It can't be total war by tweet. It can't be total war by election. It has to be a mediation of differences. And I think President Biden's victory in 2020 was the first great act in this drama of trying to create a longer lease on life for this experiment. And I think in many ways, 2022 will stand as a really important midterm election, as important really as any I can think of. Heck, Abraham Lincoln lost functional control of the House of Representatives in the middle of the Civil War. Presidents and incumbent parties usually get clobbered to some degree or another.
Right.
And interestingly, President Biden here has defied history. And what it really is, though, and I don't want to say this in a partisan way, I'm not a partisan. As you said, President Biden's my friend. I help him when I can. But I help him, and I believe in what he's trying to do, because he believes in this constitutional experiment. And you can disagree about his views on taxes or climate or whatever you want to disagree about. That's fine. That's what we're supposed to do, to use the phrase you used a minute ago. Yeah. But you can't argue about the functional reality of the rule of law. And the rule of law, I think, was on the ballot last week, and I think it won. And that doesn't mean we can take it for granted, but let's be honest, we'd be having a tonally different conversation if these deniers had won. They lost, American democracy won, and let's get back to arguing about marginal tax rates and climate, and not arguing about reality itself.
Yeah, I mean, that would be music to my ears. I mean, that was my great fear of the last 4 or 5 years, John, and that's why I'm such a big fan of your work, is that it just felt like things were coming unglued and coming apart at the seams. And we're just getting to a point where we're not even not just respecting facts and truth and that sort of thing, but elections. We're going from alternative facts to alternative election results, I think was what was happening back in 2020. And this time, and to your point about President Biden, I want to ask you about this because you were just alluding to this. Historically, as you were saying, presidents struggle. The party in power struggles during a midterm, and President Biden's approval rating was in the 40s. The economy was getting low marks from voters. People could look at the high gas prices down the street, and yet President Biden was able to buck all of that. Democrats were able to buck all of that. Why do you think that occurred?
I think that the argument about democracy, which I believe in fervently, was dispositive. If not, I'm not sure how many people there were voting solely on democracy, but it was part of a matrix of concerns. It's really hard in the American experience, if you think about it, to take away someone's right. Our story is about the expansion of rights. It's about widening the mainstream. It's about increasing individual autonomy so that we will fulfill the Declaration of Independence that we're all created equal, right? I mean, if you think about civil rights, women's rights, workers' rights, that's the story of the country. And our best moments have been moments where we have expanded the capacity of people to determine their own destinies within the constitutional structure, as opposed to limiting that. And I think when the Supreme Court overturned Roe versus Wade and said, in the opinion, it should be a political issue, well, you know what? We have something of a verdict on that now, don't we?
Right.
Not just in Kansas, but around the country. And what the election denial is about is taking away our right to choose our leaders. And so Americans don't like, and they may not even recognize it at a conscious level, they don't like the idea of losing autonomy and of ceding authority to temporary majorities or one party or another. That's the greatness of the American experience, right? Is that we don't have a culture of tolerance, because tolerance suggests, this is a little dorky for you on a Saturday afternoon, but you ask.
That's all right. Lay it on us. That's all right.
Okay. So tolerance, if you think about it, this was a Madisonian argument way back. Religious tolerance, for instance, is a little tricky because if you tolerate, that presupposes that there's a majority that's granting a right for a minority to do something, right? You're tolerating. If you change the prism a little bit and think of it as liberty, that is not religious tolerance, but religious liberty, then liberty is sacrosanct. Nobody can take away your liberty. Tolerance comes and goes. And at the core of the American insight is that we are free people. And that applies to our healthcare decisions. It applies to our decisions about how we want to make a living, how we want to raise our families, and who we want to vote for. And I think that that sensibility was very much in the country. It's been manifested in the vote. And I think that a lot of what we do for a living and a lot of what our friends do for a living, we need to look anew yet again at ourselves, because the business of predicting in a country of 330 million people is a very tricky business.